My name is Dr. Mike Yeadon. I left Pfizer in 2011. What we were being told about this virus and what we needed to do in order to stay safe was simply not true. So it's not just a matter of disagreeing professionally, it's just complete nonsense. And we can certainly talk about the unreliability, untrustworthy nature of PCR testing. Everything your government has told you about this virus, everything you need to do to stay safe is a lie. You should disregard all announcements about case rates in your community. They're not telling the truth. And if they're not telling the truth, that means there's something else afoot. And I'm here today to tell you that there's something very, very bad happening. And if you don't pay attention, you will soon lose any chance to do anything about it. And don't say you weren't warned, because I've been warning people as long as I can and as hard as I can that governments around the world, and certainly yours locally, is lying to you in various ways that are easy for you to establish.
We have 33 confirmed positive tests.
We have 33 Pennsylvanians who have tested positive for
COVID-19.
Today we have 33 cases.
There were 33 new cases.
The state of Minnesota today reported 33 new COVID-19 related deaths.
There are 33 confirmed cases in Arkansas.
That's the largest single-day increase so far, raising the total to 33.
33.
There were 33 confirmed cases in North Carolina.
33.
There was 33 everywhere. I think that was Red Team Go. I think 33 is like Red Team Go. Everybody goes, okay, let's do it. It's time. Yeah, what? Dude, there's like literally 1,033s and 33 new cases. 33 people died in fucking Hong Kong.
The number 33, we all know what that represents. Everywhere, every single day, it was like, well, 12 more cases, which now brings the state to 33.
Yes.
We had 33 cases today.
Yes.
We had 11 cases, which now it's 33. 33 more people. I'm going, oh my God, how dumb do you have to see to not understand this is going on? Yeah, that was green light go. We're off to the races.
Yeah. You've been subject to propaganda and lies by people who are very well trained in how they do that. And if you find one thing your government has said which is clearly not true, I ask you this: why would you believe anything else they've told you? Don't you think that retired ex-Pfizer guy might have something after all? I beg of you to no longer assume what you're being told is true. I can't sweep away highly accurately done propaganda by people who are lying to you. If you would like to stand behind the desk called Comfortable Lies, there's absolutely nothing I can do to stop you. But if you would like to go to the desk called Uncomfortable Truths, which is the one I'm sitting behind, then welcome.
History is truly at a turning point.
We were afraid of the flu. We didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is.
Do you hear what he's saying? And it mostly affects the elderly. And he said it was like the flu. That's what he said. Now, if I said those things, they'd take my channel down on YouTube. And this is what we ruined everyone's life over. And now he's admitting it. And no one gives a shit. No one. This isn't going to be run on CNN for a week.
When someone dies of cancer, for instance, generally it's pneumonia or the flu that takes them out. It's like they're so weak that if they get the flu or if they even get a bad cold or pneumonia, that's everybody knows, right? That's common knowledge, right? Yep. But they don't put the flu for cause of death. They put cancer still, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But when it comes to COVID, which is same symptoms, it's a coronavirus, they mark that as the cause of death. What if everybody that died of the flu that had cancer and the flu took them out, what if they marked that as a flu death? How many flu deaths would we have a year? Like 1 million? We would have like 1 million flu deaths a year, right?
More, yeah.
Right?
Do they do that with?
It's interesting, isn't it?
They had no flu cases, which was the wildest shit ever. Like, if you look at the flu, there's a map that they had like red for a positive test of the flu during flu season, and then they showed 2020. In the year 2020, it's like a non-existent flu season.
Yeah.
It was the lowest recorded numbers of flu ever.
There's your flu last year.
Here's your flu this year. Literally doesn't even exist. It's not even there. Look. And again, this is the CDC's numbers. CDC's numbers. The flu is magically gone. It's all COVID now.
I just want to be clear in terms of the definition of people dying of COVID. So the case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death.
What she said is, it doesn't matter what you die of. If we test you and you have COVID, we're marking it as a COVID death from a test that can't even distinguish COVID from the flu.
Governments all over the world, and including the United States, sent out instructions to doctors saying, change the way you fill out death certificates. And what they told them to do is essentially attribute everything as much as possible to COVID. And so then, if they had someone who died of flu symptoms, they would say, oh, well, those are the symptoms of COVID, and they put COVID on the death certificate. And they would never, they would just not consider the flu because they're told to put COVID. And then you have all the death numbers showing these COVID deaths, and then you look at the flu deaths, and they're like practically zero. Right? Now, something that happens every year over and over again doesn't simply go away one year. What actually happened is that flu cases were just relabeled as COVID cases to give the appearance that there was a new deadly disease. But there really wasn't any. There was just those flu patients and then some other patients that were murdered by the medical establishment that had other illnesses. Like some of them had died of a gunshot wound and they were labeled as a COVID death. Right, one pedestrian got hit by a bus in the UK and was labeled as a COVID death.
So there are also new questions over whether Florida counties are correctly tabulating coronavirus deaths. One of the answers really surprised us. He told us that one person actually died in a motorcycle accident. And he told us that had gone into the COVID numbers, and he had asked the state to remove that number. And when asked if it had actually been removed or cleared from that data, he said he didn't think so, he wasn't sure, but he was going to double check on that. And so that's when we started asking questions here.
Everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that was the cause of the death.
By this point last year, there were over 174,000 confirmed cases of flu. This flu season, look at that, has only 1,499 confirmed cases. That is less than 1% of the total this time last year.
PCR tests can't distinguish between the flu and COVID. Are we looking at that? Are we concerned about that?
We have got virtually no flu.
This in with a large group of doctors and a really large group of nurses also, because we have contact prepared for us. I want to state, if there is no pandemic, I am wondering why our kids are in schools with masks. A group of doctors and a really large group of nurses also, because we have contact with 87,000 nurses that do not want the vaccine that is being prepared for us. I want to state, if there is no pandemic, I am wondering why our kids are in schools with masks. There's no reason for panic. Also in the medical practice, there's no reason for panic. The panic is created by these false positive PCR tests. 89% until 94% of those PCR tests are false positive.
You've got...
Neanche la superficie. Poi passiamo sulla frutta, in questo senso. Kiwi e venuto positivo. Ripetiamo l'operazione. Su 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tamponi come positivi nell'SNI.
The PCR is just completely invalid, because even if it did work as a test, well, what are you measuring? Because the only way to develop a test to measure a virus is to first demonstrate the virus and then find some part of it that you can measure more easily. The PCR is just completely invalid because even if it did work as a test, well, what are you measuring? Because the only way to develop a test to measure a virus is to first demonstrate the virus and then find some part of it that you can measure more easily. But the PCR test as it is completely meaningless, and it doesn't matter how many times they amplify it. That's just a way to see what they can do is they can manipulate the test. And this is why they use PCR, because it's so easy to manipulate. There are at least 3 different variables that you can tweak to change your outcome. And the governments are using the results of this test to drive the policy. So if they want to institute a new policy or initiate more fear in the public, they can tweak the test. One of the ways is by increasing the amplification cycles, but there are other ways. And that will increase the number of positives.